One simple question could transform how you show up as a leader. Who are you outside of your job title? The sad part, most high performers cannot even answer it. And that's exactly why they feel stuck despite crushing it on paper. Today, Ben and I sat down with Charles Ruiz, a dear friend and an executive coach who helps leaders move from external validation to authentic presence. In this episode, you'll discover why starting your presentation with a burrito order might be more powerful than leading with data. The 4Cs framework that helped Charlie rebuild his identity after career failure. How one exec went from scripted presentations to memorable storytelling by embracing his Portuguese roots. And why presence over preference is the secret to both leadership and life satisfaction. So if you ever felt successful on paper, but disconnected from who you really are, this conversation will give you practical tools to show up more authentically. Whether you're leading a team, giving presentations, or just trying to figure out your next season of life, you will walk away from this conversation with a clearer sense of how your story can become your superpower. So let's dive in.
All right, we are live. Charlie, thanks so much for joining us.
Of course, thanks for having me. Pumped to be here.
Great to see you both.
So Marc is definitely the connector of this group. You two met, I think, originally in Asana when Marc was at Asana and Charlie was coming in to help out. Marc, do you want to tell a little bit more of that story?
Actually, yeah, it's a little more complicated. So at Asana, we had a very generous professional development budget, and they partnered with a bunch of firms. And one of the firms that they partnered with was S&P, and I met probably the favorite coach that I've ever worked with. You know, Charlie, you might be out there, but Judy's really special. But basically, so Judy was a coach that I worked with on communication, executive presence, a bunch of other things. And when I was thinking of starting Supra, she was one of the first person that I reached out to, be like, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. What are your thoughts? And also, I would love to any recommendations for awesome facilitators that you think would be perfect for this. And she was like, hey, I have the guy for you. He's a dear friend, super talented, also just started his own coaching firm. And also you two are going to get along. That's how I met Charlie. Judy connected us. And Charlie became our first Supra coach. So he saw it from just an idea to, becoming this growing community. And we tested a lot of concepts to the point that now I feel like we have a pretty dialed in playbook. And then, in parallel, Charlie has continued to grow his coaching business. He's narrowed into like his superpower, has done a lot of really cool stuff, worked with some amazing athletes, tech entrepreneurs, execs. But that's the long story of how Charlie and I met.
Man, I love that. I'm so excited to finally meet you, Charlie. I've heard so much about you from Marc. So
yes,
we haven't had a chance to be in a group together inside of Supra that you facilitated, a cohort that I've been part of, but I'm sure people have been very lucky to have you.
I know. Yeah, I can't believe how many years it's been. And just even you replaying that, Marc, was like such a fun journey that it's been on both of our ends to look back at it. And for me to think about that even first year of testing and tweaking, it was like, whoa. And now to look at the community of almost 500, wow, it has expanded so much. It's beautiful, really.
Yeah, it's going to be 3 years in September. So in a couple of months, which is crazy.
We got to throw a birthday party for Supra.
We do.
A lot of balloons.
Get all these superhumans together, perhaps at a trailhead somewhere,
Gotta do a Supra nature hike. I think I would love that.
Yeah.
So that's good context and helpful for me to also know. I originally misunderstood the connection just by 1 degree. But I think, Charlie, the place that I think we wanted to start the conversation is for those watching the video, there's a completely impossible to ignore neon sign behind Charlie that says presence over preference. And I'm sure you get this question a million times a day, but I've never actually asked you about this. So what is the backstory?
Yeah. The backstory, presence over preference, actually starts right when I started my own firm. And as you know, you're kind of figuring out the things as you're figuring them out. And I had never been to New York, and I got invited to this other community called The Post that I've shared a bit with Mark. And the woman who was there facilitating, a dear friend of mine now, was taking everyone through the brand exercise. And at this point, I didn't even call myself a business owner. I called myself a freelancer, was trying to get more time for my kids. And I was there learning, and she took us through a brand exercise. And I was like, oh, I've done a brand leadership like course with Judy and with other people where like I have a kind of a loose brand statement. And we went and did it. And then she's like, okay, condense all this stuff into 5 words or less. Like, that's impossible. What is your leadership brand? 5 words or less. And then I wrote presence over preference on a piece of paper. And then here I am now in a room full of 150 athletes in New York at the NBA Players Association. And they're all in business now. And I stood up, grabbed the mic, and she's like, all right, what is yours? And I said, presence. I said, choose presence over preference. She said, what does that mean? And then I was like, I don't know yet. And what I said was, we prefer to be doing so many other things at any point in time in our life right now. But if we can choose to be present over what we maybe prefer to be doing, that is arguably the biggest gift that we can give the person in front of us as a leader. And that includes ourselves. So if we can always choose to be present over our preference, then we might just be able to show up and build relationships just a little bit more better.
I love that. Mark, you know what that makes me think of is something I think we've alluded to, but we've never actually fleshed out on the podcast, is that we both follow Michael Singer's podcast. He's like a Zen teaching or multi-faith kind of spiritual teacher. And one of the biggest things that I take away from his lectures that he's very consistent about repeating is how the reason we are unhappy is because of preferences. And the moment that we give up preferences, it's impossible to be disappointed if you don't have a preference. Like being upset about the rain on your birthday is because you have a preference for it to be sunny on your birthday. But if you don't have a preference and it's just raining, it's great. Like we're going to have like a rainy birthday. It's awesome. So that's kind of what comes to mind as you were describing that.
Yeah. I mean, his book is amazing. I think he has a couple, but one that I've reread multiple times is The Surrender Experiment. I think, a lot of the unhappiness comes from having expectations and trying to worry about controlling the things you cannot control. But once you surrender to, hey, here's what's happening, how do I make the most out of it? There's a lot of really cool things that happen. And it's funny, I hate social media, but one of the people that I love watching their stories and their posts is Charlie's, because I just feel like it's very weird. I'm watching someone else's stories of the world, but I get inspired because I'm like, wow, Charlie's so present in that moment that he's sharing with the world, and how he's thinking about that moment and what he's learning from being with his daughters. And you have this whole thing of, hey, leadership doesn't stop in the weekend, and kind of sharing how you think about I think a lot of people separate the two, the work persona and the personal persona. But I think it's really cool to see you kind of think from that leadership lenses when you're spending time with your 6-year-old or 4-year-old, which is super inspiring.
Mark, so thank you for that. And I've never talked about this on a podcast, and I think about it often because on the other side of it, you started with, I hate social media. Yet I even do enjoy watching some of these perspectives. And I catch myself, with social, especially as a father, of 3 little girls, where there are those moments where you do have in the car that aren't seen. And those are unbelievably, you cherish those. And then when I did start to record maybe a day in the life, or what was going to be a busy workday that turned into 2 or 3 sick children, and you're just kind of navigating the world, I think what happened was I was like, wow, I'm learning even live while I do this. But it's also these creative love notes to myself and to my girls, which really helped me get back into the social media game, to where it wasn't look at me. I don't have a huge follower account, and that's okay, because these are more love notes in my creative outlet now. And I struggled. So thank you. I say thank you, because I struggle with, just put your phone away and be in the moment, which I am. While at the same time, I'm taking something and hopefully sharing it for my future self. And I got that from my dear mentor who passed last year, who would send me the most random street signs, pictures, flower, sky, with some random poetic text message next to it. And he, Buddhist, was the art of present. He was a master of that. And he almost gave me the okay to say, hey, to observe is like, this is the beauty of it. And if you can share that beauty with somebody else, then why would you not? It's not that you want present, it's that you're trying to take that lesson or that moment and share it potentially for yourself or for somebody else. So that's what I hope the intention is, or that's what I hope I do. And you just gave me a little, hey, yeah, I get that. So thank you.
Yeah. And I've actually never either was able to articulate it that way or even thought about it. But yeah, I think the reason why I like your content over probably other people's content is that it's real, right? It feels like, hey, this is for Charlie almost. And I can sense that versus someone else that's, I'm making this video because I want to show the world, or here's what I want the world to think. But you're actually like taking those moments, cherishing them, and almost processing them for yourself. And then you're just choosing to share them with the world. But it seems like you would get the value out of it even if you didn't share them with the world, which is really
Where
cool.
Where can I be getting this content? Why am I not seeing all these stories? Where are they?
Thank you. Unfortunately, LinkedIn, probably the only person I'm going to get I don't get likes there because my parents aren't on LinkedIn, but I try to do it via short/long form written on LinkedIn. But I'm mainly on Instagram. The TikTok generation might not necessarily have the attention span for my POV walkthroughs of me pouring my coffee, but you can.
And do you do stories or post or both?
So I do. My favorite, like Marc references, I do like a leadership doesn't stop on the weekend, which is essentially all the stuff that our children teach us on the weekend. I do that. And then I do a lot of POV like walkthroughs, like the whole, like, come with me, get ready with me. I don't do the get ready with me, but same concept where I walk you through what I'm doing for the day. And sometimes that does mean, hey, I'm in Arizona and I'm getting ready for a leadership offsite, or I'm getting ready for a keynote to deliver. And it's me prepping for that. Or it's just the random Tuesday in summer where we're riding mini bikes with the girls and I'm just watching their perspective and I'm learning like, man, I need to do that in my own life. And then I would share that through a voiceover and them doing the thing.
I love that. I'll be honest, I'm constantly torn when I'm experiencing something very special, especially with my daughter. I have a 2.5-year-old daughter. When I'm there's at the playground or when we're having a meal or something and there's a special moment and I'm torn between like, I want to capture it because like it's like sand slipping through your fingers. Like it's just going to be gone 1 second later. But then at the same time, I want to be fully present in it. And I don't want to like get out of it. I'm always torn about that.
It's the hardest, Ben. And you know what? I'll share this with you. Again, I love the conversational part of this. It just feels way better just off the top. Like, this is awesome. I'm just having a normal conversation without scripted questions. Shout out Supra. So not every Sunday, but probably twice a month, what we'll do as a family is we'll get our coffee. And I don't give the coffee to my children, but we'll get our coffee and then the children will sit on the couch with us. And they'll say, we want to look at pictures of when we were babies, or a picture of Hawaii, or we just got back from 4th of July weekend. So what we'll do is we'll go and we'll sit on the couch and we'll go to our Apple TV and I'll look, all right, 4th of July, 2019, Sienna was a baby. And we'll go to that and we'll sit there and like look at those pictures. And then of course, like as you're scrolling, like, oh my gosh, remember this video? And then we'll do that. So these girls are now like watching them grow and we're remembering as a family, oh, do you remember that trip to Hawaii? Or, oh, we did that. And then like, we're having this like universal, like, oh, I'm so glad. And then that is my reminder of, yes, it's not all the time, but man, we get to relive our life through a fun way every Sunday morning. And the girls are starting to love it. And we get to share that together as a family. And it reminds me of our journey and say, wow, I cannot believe we did that 2 years ago. I can't believe I met Marc for the first time in person when all of a sudden the shot of me and him in Barcelona pops up. And I'm like, do you remember when me and Lee were randomly in Barcelona and I met Marc at the top bar in the world? Like that, I wouldn't remember that unless I'm scrolling through. I'm like, oh my God, look at me and Marc. I still didn't have hair, but that's Marc and that's me. Like,
I love that framing.
That helps me, Ben. That helps me with that moment.
Yeah, it's funny. The first thing, I think our daughter loves watching now, she can realize she's watching videos of herself on the phone. So the first thing she wants after we capture a video is like, I want to see. And like, she's like, you show her back. And yeah, I can't wait to have a growing body of those moments to look back at together while staying present as a guardrail, like I don't want to give up my presence to do that, but I don't think you are either. I think you're being really intentional about it.
And I think that's why I don't have kids yet, but I have a bunch of friends that do, including you too. And I think that's why those like Meta Ray-Ban glasses, the ones that have a camera, are like I think that's where they found the product market fit with parents, because basically like you don't have to take your phone out. You can just quickly press something, takes a picture, and it almost feels like you don't have to like compromise the two. I know it's a little bit like,
I just thought about buying those, and because I'm due for a new pair of Ray-Bans, and the price was like another 150 or $200 or something. So it's not like, it's basically twice the price. But assuming they were the same price, I actually asked myself the question of, do I want to always have it available, right? Mm-hmm. Or is there something special about being quote unquote like off the grid when it comes to like cameras? And I ended up deciding to buy a regular pair because maybe I'll make that decision differently in a year or two. But at this stage, I just felt like I don't want to have a camera on my face all the time. There's something about that. It feels a little too much.
Oh, yeah. Probably a rabbit hole we can dive into of wearables, of AI, of tech. And I think what comes to me is my Aura ring just went bye-bye. It just stopped working. And Mark, we talked a little bit about this. And then like they were like, oh, sorry, you're out of warranty. So like buy a new one. Like, okay, well, I'm going to go get a Whoop. And then I contemplate getting a Whoop. And then I'm like, whoa, I got this Apple Watch. And then I just went back to, let me just zoom out for a second. And then I had this random dinner where I'm trying to get my guys together, calling it a monthly man dinner. And literally it's just to try to get us in one place because we all live so close, but it's impossible because we all have kids. And one of my buddies said this, and he's an electrician. He's like, dude, you know this in baseball. This is what we do. He's like, you got to standardize before you optimize. And I was like, so this is month one. You already got us here. Look, you got 7 out of 8 of us. Don't plan a trip to Topgolf or a hike. Let's just choose another local bar, same time next month, and let's standardize before you start optimizing with all of your questions and other stuff that you want to do. And then that made me go, man, let me just not choose a wearable for a second and just go back to what I knew was helping me perform at my best. And I haven't bought anything yet. And it's been like 2 months. And it feels weird because I want to do all the stuff, but I haven't. And it feels kind of nice.
That's a choice. My Apple Watch recently broke and I had to decide. I actually went like a week or two with just nothing on me. And it was like crazy. Like, I can't believe my steps are not being tracked right now. I'm leaving so much money on the table. And then I looked at Aura, I looked at Whoop, and I ended up just deciding to buy another Apple Watch. And just like, I like knowing what temperature it is outside, looking at my wrist. I like knowing what time it is. Like, there's no screen on the Whoop thing, and there's obviously no screen on the Aura. So if I got an Aura or Whoop, I'd have to buy a watch anyway. So anyways, I resonate.
Yeah,
Mark, we are like so far off the main topic that I don't even know if this is interesting to anybody, but I'm loving this conversation so far personally.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I mean, I back to the Aura ring, and I'm back also to the topic of presence over preference. Like, I've probably been wearing my ring for like now 4 years. It led me to completely stop drinking. I got very disciplined about when I go to bed. But it's the funny thing is I feel like I probably got the 80% of the benefits in the first like 4-5 months, probably when I stopped drinking. And then after that, I built the habits. And I've been thinking about it. It's like now it's almost like at a point where I'm like, I wonder if wearing this thing is making me less present, and it's like making me like optimize the wrong things. Like, I'm sure, like I think I'm at a point where I trust myself of knowing, hey, like if you're discipline about your exercise, eating habits, sleep habits, you're going to have a better life and day. Because I feel like the way I think about my life is like the collection of days. And if most of my days are good, I'm going to have a good life. And I know that like having good sleep is very strongly correlated with how good my next day is going to be. But I feel like right now I already built that habit. So I'm like, okay, but is this really adding is that incremental value that I'm getting from maybe knowing my last night's score worth maybe like the opportunities that I have to be maybe more spontaneous or to just kind of let go? So that's something that I've been thinking about lately. And I'm sure it translates to a lot of different things of what we measure at work, having all these like meeting recorders, etc. So it's something that I've been thinking about of like, at what point is it worth maybe stop measuring because you've already gotten there, and maybe you should put your energy into another part of your life that maybe requires a bit more work, or there's more opportunity to get better and getting middle things. So that's just something that's I've been thinking about in my personal life. I don't know if you guys have any reactions or.
I was gonna say, Mark, we talked about, and I know we'll probably get into storytelling, which is like one big arm of my business and what I'm doing. But the other thing that we talked about a while ago, and that I've also talked about and worked on with, what do you call them? Supra. What do we call each other? Supra ins, Supra.
Super nights. Just super members. Yeah.
And I think what you just talked about is a lot of what started me in this whole world of trying to get more present in different areas of my life. And it was part of the reason why I started the business, right? Because I found myself here in this gym office space working during the pandemic, helping people on their presentations and their keynotes and their virtual summits 8 or 9 hours while I had a 1-year-old and then a newborn. And then it like had this like moment where I was like, wait a second. I'm locked in on the metrics, on all of the performance stuff in the working world that we know so well. But I'm like, how am I navigating this when it comes to my relationships and my creativity and my freedom and my play? So I think what I started to do was to ask myself those questions. If I were to get locked in on my metrics for my mind and my body, my core, what does that mean? If I can get locked in with my relationships, my people, my community, what does that look like? Craft, cool, got it. My profession, craft, you name it, quota, numbers, accounts, that's easy. We have bosses for that. And then I was like, what about my play and my fun? I named it the creativity. So like I then created this own framework in my mind of, oh, these are the 4 C's. It's your core, your craft, your community, and your creativity. If I can just start to create metrics and be present in these 4 areas, then I think I'm going to be able to create some intentional behaviors and habits around that. So I started to ask people what theirs were. And it eventually became the 4 C's, which became, and it still is, the foundation of my keynote and how I work with an executive team and how I work with people one-on-one, where I'm like, all right, you're looking for realignment? You want recalibration? Let's do the exercise, bust out the 4 C's, and we do it. And all of that is around me redefining what performance through presence is in those 4 areas. And then someone was like, have you read Designing Your Life? It's this book. And I'm like, I haven't. And then they're like, the 4 C's is that. And I'm like, awesome. Well, I'm not a Stanford professor, but hey, it's neither here nor there. How I operate, how I work with people, and it all speaks to the performance thing and really being intentional about the behaviors and metrics elsewhere.
I think that person might have been me bringing up that book. Sorry about that.
Oh, Mark, you're the reason I have it. It's sitting on my bookshelf. I haven't read it yet.
Come on, guys.
I think people keep telling me I should. I know.
By the way, I feel you two are both doing an excellent job at almost sounds like you've read and internalized that book. But it's funny, Charlie, because like I feel like when we started talking in the early Supra days, you were working with a lot of like really high performers, especially in San Francisco, Silicon Valley, top companies, including some of the Supra members. You're like, a conversation we would always have is so funny, man. You look at these people in paper and they're absolutely crushing it, right? They have a job that many would die to have. They've grown so quickly in their career. But once you get like in a close setting or intimate setting, they're just a little bit broken and they're so unhappy with like or not so unhappy, but they're not happy with how their current reality is. And I think that's a lot of kind of like, you just delivered so much value with people just helping do that. Like, I feel like, yeah, the 4 C's is one of them. I think initially you called it like the 4 pillars work or like defining your pillars. But yeah, I'm curious, maybe like what are some trends that you've noticed working with all these like high performers? So kind of like, what were the parts that maybe were lacking or not? Yeah.
I think this goes back to the identity and your story, because we get so used to, as a high performer, just being told of what success looks like from an external point of view. And in sport, right, as a former professional athlete, this is the way you operate. Win, loss. Are you holding the trophy or are you not? It's black and white. Yes, we know that. It's black and white when your company sells. It's black and white when you get the funding or you don't get the funding. And I think because we're just conditioned to that, we listen to it and we are constantly externally validated of you were successful if you do this. Whereas then when I had to reconstruct it after losing, having career-ending surgery, failing in my first 2 sales jobs, you name it, I can keep going. And just having a series of L's, as they call them. What I realized was like, oh no, those are L's by definition from somebody that I also don't really give a shit about. I don't know if we're to swear.
Yeah,
here, but
we can swear.
And it wasn't to say like, oh, give me a trophy, because that's also not how it works in sports. But there is this notion of, wait a second, if I'm constantly chasing this pillar or this mountain, L4, L5, L6, L7, you both know it. But I'm never asking myself, who am I outside of this job? Who am I? What part of my story do I actually want to be told here on this part of my journey, in my profession, in my career? But I'm asking myself first. I'm not asking the external validating forces in my life. Most people will get there when they're 35, 40, they're 10, 15 years into their career. So what I like to do is get them early, which is why it's been such a benefit to work with S&P and have them give me some of these APMs, because I get to ask them, who are you outside of this new job you got as a Google product manager, as an Asana product manager? And they, even at that point, first, second job, can't answer it. So I try to force feed people to be able to answer that, so that in 10, 15 years, when they are a director of product, or they are a head of product, or they are a CPO, they've been asking themselves that whole time, who am I? What is my story? What story do I want to be told? And how can I show that and bring that to my leadership? And to me, that's where the magic happens. And
it's so hard to do that early. It's so hard to do that early. Like I'd like to think I've been a reflective person for a long time. And I remember in my early 20s or even in college, like I sat with that question. I'm like, honestly, I don't know. Like, I don't know. I felt like I was missing data points to like inform that. But now that I'm in my mid 30s and I have, 13 years since graduating college and lots of real world, quote unquote, adult life experiences across like work, but also as a dad and stuff, and with lots of friends. And like, I feel like the amount of data points I have now to figure out the answer to like, who am I as a person outside of the title of whatever I do for work is so much easier than ever. I'm curious, like, how do you get people who are younger in life that have less like real world data points as quote unquote, like well-formed adults? How do you get them to connect with who they are outside of the job?
Such a good question, because I'm still figuring it out. And I think part of it just comes with the ability to be able to listen and pick up on the cues and tones, and even just the reaction as to when I do ask them a question, how they respond. And then from there, I get to pull it out. Like a short explanation of it, and it was part of the catalyst of me even starting my own firm, it was 2-pronged. This was one of them. I'm working with an intern at Yahoo. I think it was Yahoo. And I was just helping her in a presentation. And it was like, great, this is what you did in the summer. Here's your degree. Here's your hometown. Here's the job. And like her presentation was all around what she did. And at the very end of it, working with her on a structure, I said, so there's nothing about you here though, other than like your name. You barely have your hometown. What about you here? What else about you, your personality? And she looked at me like, what are you talking about? I'm like, you like dogs, coffee. There's nothing about you. Who are you? She cried. And I was like, oh, this took a turn. And then I stopped and I was like, okay, if there's anything that you know, one, it's that your presentation is going to be rough. You're going to kill it. But if there's anything you remember, it's that there's this bald guy that's helping you in your presentation, is that you remember that to always answer the question, who am I outside of my degree, my university, and my job? She hung up.
If you're enjoying this conversation, please check out the links in the show notes to support the podcast. Marc and I do this out of love, but to keep it going, we also need your support. Thanks, and now back to the episode. Why do you think that matters? If someone's listening and they're like, why does it matter that I infuse information about myself into this other than like the content? Like, what's the reason someone do you think should care about that? Marc looks like he's ramping up too. What do you got to say?
And one thing that I want to say too is like, Charlie, you were saying, hey, like even when you were talking about like some people figure out when they're 35 or 40, like I actually think that's like an optimistic case. Like I think there's some people who are like 40 or 45 that still haven't figured out who they are, what their preference have. Also, I think it's, if you're at that time, like it's totally okay if you haven't. And I think we, just wanted to throw it out there that I think it's a hard question. I think a lot of people haven't figured out even into their 40s in a way.
Yes, absolutely, Mark. And assuming that the connection is back, I'll answer Ben's question and pick up, Mark, where you left off. Why do I think it's important? I think it's less important for the external. It's more important for you to be able to go there, because that nuance of being memorable or being able to celebrate and acknowledge your own growth and the unique intricacies of who you are happens from getting the reps as many times as you can to say, this is me. And if we just get so conditioned to the script, then we forget. And we are given scripts all the damn time. So get the reps by sneaking it in there, whether it's the hat that you wear or the shoes that you throw on your feet when you go in for the interview. It's the small little subtle nuances, so that, going back to where Mark's at, it's okay when you're 40 and you're like, who the hell? I don't know what my identity is. You hear it. I've heard it. I heard it in Supra. I don't know what I'm doing outside of this product world. Great. Let's go back. And then from that, it's giving your spouse, and this is the thing that people don't do with their story or even just the time. Who were you then? Who were you in high school? Who were you as a junior college kid trying to get a scholarship? Who were you in sales, fumbling through Salesforce? Who were you? What were you thinking about? Who were you talking to? What was fueling you? We don't do that. And it's part of the reason why I ran an identity marathon, which I'm happy to talk about, that allowed me to start answering some of these questions.
I have to ask, what is an identity marathon?
Yes. So in the spirit of one, forcing myself to think I'm still a capable athlete. I had always wanted to run a marathon, but I never wanted to sign up for one. Not because people who sign up for marathons, like, I just didn't want to run with other people. And I found myself running one day, and I ran through my old apartment complex that I grew up in. I ran by my uncle, my godfather's stoop, and he's no longer with us. And I found myself getting super emotional. I was like, whoa, I haven't been back to this apartment complex in forever. And then I ended up running 10 miles a day. I come back home, I walk up, and my wife's like, how are you? You look like you've been crying. I'm like, I was. I'm okay. And this is why I'm also trying to think about, who am I as this business owner trying to start my own business, asking Mark questions every single day. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to run a identity marathon. She's like, okay, what the hell is that? I was like, my old neighborhood, my old apartment complex, my grandma's house, my junior college, my elementary school, my dear friend's house. All of this is within a 30-mile radius. I'm going to go map out 26.2 miles of all the places in my life that shape who I am. And I'm going to think through who I was at that point. And then through that, my finish line is going to be my porch, where I have a little robe string where the girls are going to be at. And that's what it ended up being. My finish line was both my girls hold a little robe, and I ran to my porch, and my home base finish line was the end of the marathon. The crazy part about that is that I had previously worked with this other leadership firm, and they were interviewing me, and they said, a part of our process in succession planning and what we work with other firms and other organizations is we interview our people. We interview that leader, almost like walking into, I love the show Shrinking, like you're walking into a session, like a therapy session, and you talk about your life. I just did that with this gentleman. So I had 2 hours of me talking about my life. What do you think I ran to when I did my identity marathon? Me listening to myself, sounds weird, but talking about who I learned from, what the apartment complex did, what my little brother's influence was. It was powerful. And eventually, hopefully, it turns into something that I encourage or get other people to do. But man, it was one of the most transformational things that I did. I finished in 2023. I finished 4 hours and 4 minutes, which immediately meant my wife was like, you're going to do it again so you can break 4. And she's right.
So you're training for that right now, once your foot feels better.
Yeah.
That was a lot.
I mean,
oh, no, I love that.
I'm just listening to this. I'm like, wow, I'm just like energized and I want to do it, but at the same time, I'm like, oh man, that sounds like emotionally, physically, and mentally exhausting. But what I mean, like, it's just so intense. Just thinking through it, like myself, I'm like, oh man, there's some parts of like my childhood or teenage years, and I'm like, ooh, it's like, I'm going to be tired going through that. I don't know if it's going to be energizing or more draining in a way, but I can totally see how it can be transformational, pivotal like event in my life. What was the main thing that you may felt after? What was different from Charlie, like after that marathon?
I think it further opened me up to really lean into all parts of my story. And that like nothing, like it was all for me. Everything happened for me. And I didn't really necessarily think that way before. Sometimes we can play the like, oh, why is this happening to me? And then when I went through it, I'm like, oh, this happened because of this. This was for you. This was for you. This was for you. And then through that, then it just further said, Charlie, go tell your story. Everyone has it. We just don't give our space, our time to go find the spaces and places that shaped it. So I left that and I was like, that was one of the most transformational things that I've ever done, because I actually gave myself the emotional and the physical space to go, who are you?
What really resonates with me is there's this concept of like self-love and self-care and self-esteem or whatever. And for some reason, that's really connecting for me right now with the idea of looking back at your story and realizing all of it was for you and it's serving you and like everything had a purpose. So I'm just connecting the dots between these things because there's an element of everything happened for a reason that I think has like a positive spin that makes me feel more empathy and more love and sympathy for who I am right now when I look back at all those experiences, regardless of how challenging they were. And I think there's something really powerful about going back and looking back at like your story and looking at it all through the eyes of how did that actually play a really important role in getting me to where I am right now. I really like that.
That's it. Like, how did that play a role to getting to me where I'm at now? As a leader, as a father, as a friend, as a husband, as a colleague, right, like that. I think that's it. And people misconstrue it. They get, it's the whole like, don't look in the rear view, right? Like there's that, or the what got you here won't get you there, the book, and I think there's a world for both of it. I think it's more of just understanding, and this is where in the world of awareness and some of the work that I do from sport to business, if awareness is the key, and that's the start of this, let me be aware of what shaped me. Now I get a choice on where and how I apply that. And that's to me that's the key, like awareness, choice. Now I get to go do based on what I already know.
Yeah, man, it's funny. Like, I feel like we've all been in similar journeys. And I think for me, the end goal is back to presence, right? Being so present in the present moment that nothing really can break me in the present. And even when things are bad, right, I have the ability to see the positive, right? I'm like, why? And like be able to find the gratitude in every moment, even when maybe that's not what I wanted or what I was hoping would happen. And I feel like maybe in the last 7 months, I've really been able to tune into that. And man, like my days are just so much better. But I think in able to get to that point, you need to go back and be able to have gratitude for those hard things that have happened or difficult moments that maybe you hadn't fully accepted in the past. But now kind of looking back, you can understand that without those moments happening, you wouldn't be where you are today. And that is like such a powerful realization.
Yes.
What's interesting is, Marc, one thing I think you and I have done together to foster a sense of presence is this podcast in a lot of ways. Like when I go into a podcast recording, I don't have preference for where it goes. My preference is that it happens, right? And that I would like it to, it's better for me that it happens than it doesn't happen. And even when we've had podcasts get canceled or whatever, it's fine. But I love having an hour and a half on the calendar for these that I'm like, I don't know what's going to happen, but all I know is that I'm not going to be checking social media. I'm not going to be checking my phone. I'm not going to be distracted with other stuff. I'm going to be entirely dialed into what's going on. And there's something really beautiful about that, I think, about being intentional, about creating that space for being present too.
Yeah. The cool thing too, Charlie, is that I feel like just hearing that story and like even maybe just starting the journey with you starting your own firm, right? And figure out, hey, how do I coach people? And you have this whole like arsenal of tools in your disposal, right? From helping teams to work together more efficiently, to helping people be better managers, to helping people define their leadership styles, to storytelling and narrative and all that stuff. But what I think what's really cool is that almost as you've lived these experiences and worked with people, you've been converging into this superpower of yours, which is kind of getting in touch with who you are and then using that to tell your story. And I feel like we were catching up.
Yep.
I think it was like 2 weeks ago, and I think like an aha moment was an exec, like a really high up exec that, a really important Silicon Valley company who, has an insane influence, came up to you. Is like, hey, the work that you do when you help me prepare for a presentation or tell a keynote really is one of the most transformational work that you do. And this is really your superpower. And I think probably a lot of people have told you that, but when you have someone who's had such an amount of success, probably has interacted with so many exec coaches, come to you and say that, it probably has a different effect. And I'm curious, like, even if with that example, like what do you think you help them with, right? And like, maybe what are some nuggets that we can like share with the world, like how you basically enable that person to get to that point where they're just so good at telling that story or presenting something that maybe could be boring, but it wasn't otherwise.
I think memorable. What's the memorable thing? And I think for that individual, it was two-pronged. One was, he was like, I haven't had a chance to even go back to my childhood and the different cultures that I was raised to tell the story about that. And yet here we're working at a company and he's presenting, I think he was like in Portugal, he was presenting in one of those countries. And he was like, whoa, like I can talk a little bit about the fact that I don't look as Portuguese, but I speak Portuguese. And I'm like, this is who you are. This is beautiful. Absolutely. You got to let that go. Bring that up. Now, how you do it, the whole different beast. But I think that was the thing where he was so used to, here's this script, this deck that the comms team gave me that I have to say word for word. So then it was like breaking that of, yes, you can. And the other one, this sounds ridiculous, but again, memorable. You probably all sat in multiple all hands updates. I don't know how many times. What happens if that starts with, instead of here are the numbers, here's what we're doing, it starts with that potential leader who says, so I just ate the best burrito from Señor Sisig right outside. My order was extra eggs, I had a side of fries, and that sauce was probably one of the best sauces I've had in my life. And then all of a sudden, they go into their updates that they would typically go in. What are people going to remember? The burrito order. And I think that goes back into this notion of identity, authenticity, and being able to tell your story. It's finding those small little quirks and getting the reps to where when you do it, it just becomes natural and it doesn't become scripted. It doesn't become scripted because most storytelling courses or frameworks, yes, frameworks exist for a reason. I have them, I use them. But if I'm going to give you a framework as we've done, Marc, and you're not going to bring yourself into it, then it's going to fall flat.
You know who's a master at this? I don't know if any of you, if you've watched Mike Birbiglia's one man shows at all, but
No.
He's such a master at telling a story and taking these little tangents, telling a personal story, and then coming back to like the main storyline. So if people are listening, check out like The Old Man in the Pool or something. But yeah, no, I think what's really resonating for me is like, I don't think people have to give up the thing they want to present. If there's like content or data or charts or whatever, you could still present that stuff. But if you just embed a little bit of a personal touch into, or like a little story about yourself or why someone should care, and you just do it thoughtfully, maybe a few times throughout that presentation, people will form an idea in their head of like who you were as a person. And they might remember the content more because you put them in a state that was more receptive to absorbing information. I mean, we're wired for story, right?
Yeah.
Like we think in terms of narrative. When you think about your day and where we are in your day, you've got a story of what you did before this and what you're doing right now and what you're going to do later today that is running at all times. So if I'm going to give you something, I need you, in order for you to absorb it and get it, you have to be able to slot it in somewhere in the existing story that you have.
That's it. You have to be able to slot it in. And you also said receptive. I can be receptive to it. If the art of storytelling creates connection with me and said audience, whoever the audience is, an audience of 2, an audience of 50. If I am making a connection to it, that's 1. 2, there's hopefully an emotional connection if it's something that requires that. But if I can't, and the word that stands out for me is like relate to it. If I can't take that and then relate it to my life or make a connection to it, then to me, we're already missing the most important piece to it. And I know as a head of engineering or as a insert title, not every single person in your audience is going to be able to resonate with something that you're saying, but everybody's going to be able to resonate with the burrito order. Now, I'm not saying to dilute or diminish to your point, Ben, of like, you have a presentation and you have your data, you have the stuff you have worked so hard on. It's just finding that small way to make the story more memorable through connection and through relatability. And like you said, we're wired for story. It's how we're built. We're constantly thinking about it. It's why we watch movies. It's like the whole time we're like, I wonder what's going to happen. You don't start the movie with the end. I mean, you do, but then the whole time they work it back. That's intentional.
Yeah, if you start the movie with the end, the movie's basically about, I wonder how we got there. Let's find out, right? But there's still an element. It's a hook or it's a bait of some kind to keep you. That's why you could say, like, what is it? You tell people what you're about to tell them. You tell them what you want to tell them, and then you tell them what you told them. Right? That's that kind of pattern.
That's it. The rule of 3s. What's up, Mark?
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is, it's like there's the importance of doing the work of who you are so you can show up authentically, right? And hopefully then if you show up authentically, someone is going to be able to see a piece of themselves in you, right? Or at least make you more human. And then you're both human. So then we have that in common, which is already a win, even if maybe that thing is not related to who you are. And I think another thing that I've been spending a lot of time thinking about lately, and that was actually triggered by a conversation in this podcast, is the role of leaning into your superpower, right? And knowing what you're like really good at, and then like taking every opportunity to do that. So then something that maybe it's hard for you, it becomes easier, and then you're able to have a bigger impact. Like, for example, like going back to like the, say, head of engineering, maybe they have the ability to talk about very complex terms in simple terms and explain maybe how they relate to the business, right? Or so how do you think about, I guess, what is your philosophy around leaning into your superpower and how to use that when telling your story? Like, how does that work look like when you're working with people?
When I'm working with somebody, how do I identify their superpower?
Mark, are you asking if there's like a connection between the idea of like your superpower and maybe how to show up more authentically when doing these kind of things?
Yeah. Like almost like how do you, like my hypothesis is if you're able to lean into your superpower when you're storytelling or even just in general at work, right? Like you're going to be able to have a bigger impact in whatever you're doing and also show up more authentically too, because you're talking about something that you're really good at, that you are passionate about, that kind of comes easier to use. I guess I'm just trying to marry the two concepts and see if you've seen any connections there, and maybe like how do you help people do that?
This may go here, it may translate, and I think part of it is when it comes to being a leader or being able to tell the story and how you show up as a leader, identifying those core values and like those traits of how you show up. Then we're talking about as a leader now, like where did this come from? So something, for example, of if your superpower, let's say as a former professional athlete, is you know how to handle failure really well. That's just one of the traits that an athlete knows. Yeah, I'm resilient. I know how to handle failure. Great. So when I go into maybe these situations and I am working with the team on navigating an organizational change or have to give an update about something that we messed up on, in my mind, I can say, because I know I've been here and I've done that, one of my superpowers is handling failure. I better have a damn story about that. And I have to be able to tell that story with emotion, with connection, with relatability, so that I can then move my team. So my superpower, I think that the question or the answer that I think I have is, if you can identify a superpower, Mark, Ben, people listening, what stories do you have to complement that? And then how does that show up in the way in which you're leading? And it goes back to, have you given yourself the space and time to even identify what is that superpower trait, let alone it goes to it.
I think people like following people who, one, that they feel that they know and that they understand. Like they're more likely to want to follow them if they trust them and understand them and feel like they know them.
Yep.
And then two, people, I think, also want to follow people who are in touch with who they are. Like, so it's this person's like self-reflective enough and they're like aware enough of themselves that like I want to hear what they have to say. It's actually one of the things like stand-up comedians are really good at is
Yes.
like they seem like so self-aware of themselves that you're like, yes, that's exactly who I'm looking at. I'm paying attention because you obviously know what I'm seeing in you. So like keep going. Like you're connected with reality in a way. And that's kind of what I'm hearing a little is if you could demonstrate that you're aware of yourself and connect it to what we're talking about, right? Like here's this thing we're doing. That's a great leadership moment.
I was just connecting the dots, just full circle for me. It's like, yeah, I think that awareness, I think is the key part of like, and I think that awareness means two things. One is knowing what you're really good at, but also knowing your weaknesses. And I think being very transparent and unapologetic about those, right? And,
Yes.
And when you're working with someone, be like, hey, here's what I can promise you I can give you, right? You'll learn this from me. This is what I'm world class. That's what you're really going to learn from me. Here are some things that are just not going to be good about me or that I'm just not good at. And you're going to have to figure out what to do, right? And I think someone that comes like that, you're like, cool, I know what I'm getting myself into. Same with relationships too, right? Like romantic, friendships, etc. Same thing.
Absolutely. Right. It goes back to the awareness somewhat where we started of how to leverage that. If I know what my superpowers are, I know what I'm here to your point. And I've had conversations with other Supra folks, right? Hey, I'm not going to be your person for this. But when it comes to structure, storytelling, this part, the 4 C's of giving you like a recalibration, yeah, come to me. I got you. But it's like being okay with that. And then again, as a leader, I think the other end of it, if I'm thinking of my reports, people want to know that you've been there and that you've done it and that you will do it. There's nothing worse than getting advice from somebody that hasn't done the thing in which you're trying to do. And this is no slight on people in the world of mental performance and sports psychology. But an example of it is, gentlemen, I do not have my MBA, do not have my PhD. I'm not certified. This was a big deal of me not starting my own business. I don't have any PCC, IC. I don't have any of this stuff. And I was very adamant about, am I going to be able to do the thing? Because everyone is telling me I need these credentials. Yet here I am, a junior college kid, state school kid, first to graduate college in my family. And I had, thankfully, 30 other coaches I was supporting, coaching me and saying, you don't have any of the things that you think you need. Goes back to external validation. Yet, how many people do you know have played a professional sport and have done 1,000 presentation skills workshops with some of the top companies in the world? How many people do you know? And I'm like, I don't know. Maybe, I don't know, one, me, maybe some other people, but I don't know. And it was like this moment of, I have done the work. And we want to know the people that we're listening to and learning from and being led by have done it. And we only know that by story. Credentials say one thing, story paints the picture.
I think credentials are another form of, it's like that. It's going back to what you were saying, Charlie, earlier about the levels, right? Like level 4, level 5, level 6. It's, I can say that if I'm level 7, I can say this, but if I'm qualified to say it, but if I'm level 5, I can't, I'm not qualified to say this. That's a form of creating a mental trap for yourself where you have to give yourself permission to do something because there's some kind of external recognition of it. Like the difference between a level 6 and a level 7 is someone decided to promote you. That's basically like the objective difference, right?
Yeah.
But it's not you being different.
No, not at all. That goes to, sorry, Mark, I know we're probably pushing on time. I had a conversation with, I had to check in with another person that I've met, been gracious to meet through Supra. It's a simple question that I would ask many product managers, not just product, just people. Here we're talking about the promotion, the next level, head of product, head of sales, you name the function. And when you sit there and actually have a conversation and say, hey, what about that next job? What about that next thing that you've been working so hard to do? Are you like looking forward to? And then when just asking that simple question, and all of a sudden they start answering like, oh, I got to do influence. I got to present here. I got to travel. And then they start talking about the stuff that they're going to be doing. And then they go, I don't really want to do any of that. What am I doing?
What a great realization too.
Yes. Which goes back to awareness, kind of where we started. Are you giving yourself the space to ask yourself those questions and to be coached or challenged or encouraged by people who are going to create that space for you, like a Ben, like a Marc, like a Supra cohort?
I mean, otherwise just on autopilot, right? And you're just operating on some like subconscious programming that's keep moving up, keep getting external validation, keep getting the promotions. Then one day you find yourself and you're like, I don't even know who I am anymore because I've been making a bunch of decisions that are coming from a place that's not about me and being authentically me, but it's about something else. And now I have to like rediscover who I am and what I'm about. And that's in the positive case that you have a wake up moment at some point. But some people go through their whole life in that kind of autopilot mode, I think.
Precisely.
I think that's where corporations are really good at, right? They create these games that are highly addictive and that try to make you think that the incentives are aligned, and to some degree they are, right? The more, in theory, the better you do, the more you get paid, the more societal recognition do you get. But then you realize that, hey, like you're playing in someone else's game as opposed to the game that you designed. And that's fine. Some people, they like that, but I think that's a choice that you have to make. Am I okay playing someone else's game, or do I want to have a chance of maybe designing my own game? And what would that look like?
That's it.
And yeah, and that's a question that I ask myself all the time. And I think it's hard. Like, I think they both have trade-offs.
The real crazy thing is when you're designing your own game and you realize you've designed a game that is actually still has room to be improved. There's still elements of that game. They're like, why have I designed my own game that is not? And that's, I think, just like an element of growth. Like the game I want to design today for the next year might be different than the game I've been playing for the last 6 months, even though both are games I've designed for myself at this phase. But that's where the learning and iteration comes from. You should be evolving the games you're playing based on what you're learning about yourself. And we're not static people. Like we keep growing and changing.
Yeah. And I think, Charlie, we've talked about it before. And I think you used the term that I really like. And I think Ben and I have also talked about it. It's that seasons, right? And your life is comprised of seasons. And same with sports, right? And I think the game that you designed for yourself should be correlated to the seasons that you're playing. And I think there should be like one game almost per season. And I think the important thing that you should ask yourself is like, what am I prioritizing for that season? What is my North Star? And I think for me, in the season of life is just learning as much as possible, right? Getting better, figure out what do I want out of life, right? And just be surrounded by really great people. And maybe next season of life will be like, how do I make as much money as possible? And then the next one would be like, hey, how am I the most present at that possible? But I think always having those like guiding lights, those things that you prioritize top of mind, I think that's what kind of allows you to have that awareness and always making the right decision.
That's it. It's a season. And it's, to your point, you want to get around the people based on the season that it's going to require. And it's one of the foundational things that I work on with individuals, with teams, with myself. Because in sport, the transferable kind of language is in season, postseason, off season. When you think of even just those three, like it's going to require different me during the off season compared to when I'm in season. Because when I'm in season, I'm locked in, I'm systematic, the routines are locked, are everyone understands it. Whereas then there's the postseason. This may be the 12, 14-hour work days that we get conditioned to with work sometime. Because in the postseason, yeah, I'm on the road 7 days. It's crazy games. Whereas then there's like this, maybe a recovery season, or it's like the preseason before the off season. So I'm truly going to do absolutely nothing for 2 weeks. In work, in life, we find ourselves always in season because we don't give ourselves the awareness to go, what season is it? And 6 months ago, yeah. Or a year ago when we had our third daughter, season of grounding and restoration. It was be home, be with dad, be with the family. We need this. Now, it's a bit different. Launches, it's execution season. It's nurturing season. Whatever it is for me is going to be different than all it is for you. Yet external validation, everything tells us what season we're in. Play your own game. And it starts with the season.
Yeah, I love that. I love that.
I think this is a good, unless you have a final question, Ben, I think it's a good place to start wrapping.
I've got a couple thoughts. The first one is I was just talking to Tal earlier, Marc, and kind of like talked about if I had to be known for something right now, what would it be? And I'm tying it to what you were describing, which is like, I feel like the thing I feel most authentically about right now is like, I want to be known for being helpful. That's an important kind of guiding principle for me right now in this season of life. And then I was tying that to what you said, Mark, which is maybe there's another season of life and the goal is to like make as much money as possible. And I kind of had a little moment where I'm like, I actually feel just like when I'm coaching people for like analytical thinking interviews, like never use like revenue as your North Star metric. It's like not a good North Star metric. You should pick something that's about value creation that has like downstream implications that will drive revenue if it goes well. And I think there's no world in which I can imagine that being as helpful as possible doesn't create also like the maximum amount of revenue opportunities for me. And so it's like, I'm just connecting some of these dots here.
I love it.
But yeah.
It goes into, and we can wrap the way Mark wants to wrap because he is the Supra Knight, the Supra. Again,
the referee.
I don't have a fitting name. What the name is. But like
the superintendent.
Nice.
Ooh, that's good. That's good.
Yeah, there is a there's a super conference of these fitness people that maybe you just sneak in there and be like, hey, this whole super thing. And neither here nor there. But in the name of presence, what you just shared, Ben, thank you for that. What is the thing helpful? For me, if there's anything that I hope to be able to do for people, for humans, for executives, for directors, for managers, for athletes, for whoever, for fathers, mothers, it's like, can I, one, be locked in and be present with them and what they're saying? But more so, can I create a space and curate an open space for you to show up and be who the hell you are every single day and to know and to believe in that person? And that doesn't mean you're going to walk into an office in San Francisco with flip-flops. I guess in San Francisco you would. But it doesn't mean that you're not going to conform and understand like where you need to be and how you need to show up and be where you need to be, where you need to be there. But it is this underlying say that if there's one place that you go where you can be who you are, is that you can show up to my Zoom call, my room, my space, my trailhead, and know like, I'm just going to show up and be who I am here. And I know that the space is welcome. That's all I want to do for everybody. And I want them to know that story is such a huge part of it.
Hell yeah. All right. So in closing, where can people learn more about you and how to get into that space? And how could they potentially be helpful to you if they want to go deeper?
Yes. We talked about it earlier. I'm on Instagram, Charles Ruiz. That's where you can watch me walk and talk. But obviously I'm on LinkedIn. And then if there is, I think the thing that I'm excited about is the launch of the Sport of Speaking, which is essentially my framing and programming for storytelling presentation skills that I'm doing across industry, but specifically with people who have a story that they want to tell. And you do not have to be a keynote speaker to be able to do that. And just stay tuned because I'm going to be doing them live in different cities. First one's in Detroit, and I'm going to hopefully be rolling them out in New York, San Francisco, and Austin for the tail end of this year and early next year. Come check me out. And actually, I want to end because I am the guest with you. Ben, you started this conversation by a take on choosing presence over preference. I'd love for you to share with the audience what your take is because I might have to take it.
I think I said I have no preference as long as I'm present. I think that's what I said.
Well, yeah. Hey, I have no preference as long as we are present.
As long as we're present. Yeah, I think that's exactly how we like to approach this podcast. That's how I try to approach a lot of conversations these days is like, let's be here together in the space that we cultivate. And there's no right and wrong answers to where it goes. It's just about being here together. But yeah, I love that you had the prompt that led to that.
Full circle. Honestly, I think that's how I like to engage with the people I love. It's like I don't have any preference as long as we can be together, present, and be there for each other. And that's all that matters because time here is finite. So let's make it count.
Ben, Mark, thank you. I'll see you at the trailhead.
Sounds like a plan.
Thanks for joining.
Thank you so much,
awesome.
both.